Welcome back to Wealth Witches. I'm your host, Katelyn Magnuson. Today we have a really special solo episode with yours truly, and I'm going to be level setting. I am recording this on June 13th. So keep that in mind with what's going on in the world and everything else. And I'm sure that if you're here listening, you have felt like the world is really heavy and there's just so many different ways that your attention is getting pulled. And maybe you've even felt like I have, where yes, it all matters, but also how much can you do about it when you still have rent or a mortgage or bills to pay, right? Capitalism slogs on. And so this is not going to be an entire episode of doom and gloom. I'm actually going to talk about some things that I'm doing to build community and some things that are going on in my life. And I'm going to have a little brag on my husband or about partnership. So stay tuned. And I'd love for you to share either on Instagram or if you follow me on TikTok, or even if you end up getting this in the email digest that we send out once a month. I'd love to hear from you with ways that you are building community, especially, or any other wins, celebrations, gratitude you have, because it's always important to me. But more now than ever, I feel like we need to prioritize community. We need to find the good that we can while also not ignoring the absolute atrocities that are occurring around us. And it is a balance that I'm going to admit I am absolutely not perfect about. I have days where I end up just rotting and scrolling my phone and, staying informed on TikTok, but at what cost? At what cost to my mental health? And there's a difference between staying informed and, fixating on things. So trying to find that balance. But like I said, we're going to sort of roll up some of the doom and gloom for a minute here, acknowledge that it's occurring, acknowledge that what's going on in LA and across so many other cities and states is not something that is okay or acceptable. And honestly, it's just absolutely atrocious at this point. But I want to talk about building community, both in light of what is going on currently, as well as in addition to. And something that a lot of you may know is I used to live in Oregon. I lived in Oregon for 25 years before moving to Idaho. And I went to Portland State. I grew up in an area that was pretty progressive, that reflected my morals and my values. And it was always really easy. I actually went back to Oregon last month and realized that I had this sort of hole. I've been feeling this way for a while. I've been wanting to nurture community, wanting to have, and not just friendships, but community. And I'm going to kind of talk about what I think the difference is between those. And again, I have not pulled up the Oxford Dictionary definition of it, but for me, community is not just friendship. Community is mutual aid. Community is, business partnerships and business colleagues. And it's this whole group of humans that you interact with that may not be friends, they may be friendly, they may be acquaintances, they hopefully do have similar interests and shared values. And that for me, community brings in a little bit more of a local aspect. And that's something that I've been really lacking. And so back in January, I had a really good friend of mine that lives about 5 hours away from me. She had come out and I gotten to spend time with both her and her brother, who lives, we're going to say locally to me. For those of you not watching the video, I locally in quotes, he lives about an hour and a half away. And so that's been really wonderful from a community building aspect and getting to see her. And something that I realized is it was really easy for me to make an international trip, to go abroad, to go do something big. But I wasn't showing up for the smaller areas in my life that I think can actually make a larger difference. And what I mean by that is when I moved from the Willamette Valley, south of Portland, to Boise, one of the things that I looked at when we were looking to move, and this is going to sound kind of silly, was there a Whole Foods? Not because Whole Foods is my holy grail, it's because it was an indicator to me that there would be interests that I shared. There may be yoga studios, there may be a sound bath, there may be a co-op, there's probably a farmer's market. I know that a Whole Foods is not synonymous with a farmer's market, but again, as an indicator, there is one in all of Idaho in Boise. We were looking at Montana at the same time that we were looking to move in 2019, and Montana didn't have any. Again, doesn't mean there aren't some areas that are a little funky, a little weird, a little more progressive, a little more accepting. And I know Boise is considered to be this progressive blue hub in an otherwise very red state. And I assumed that that would be enough. What I didn't take into consideration is that while I would consider Boise to be progressive in comparison to the rest of Idaho, it is more of a purple in a lot of areas, and especially compared to where I had come from. And so that's something, again, I'd taken for granted. And especially the area that I moved, which is not down in Boise in the city. I live outside of Boise in the mountains, and I live in an area that I love. If I could take my home and I could transport it. We have acreage, we have, our chickens out here, we have property, we have this beautiful house that I absolutely love, and privacy. But unfortunately, a lot of our neighbors are MAGA supporters. And this is an environment that is not particularly welcoming to those that are not. Again, I have a lot of privilege. I am a white middle class woman with a white middle class Republican passing husband. And people just assume a lot of the time, right? And so there's this element of feeling like we can only have surface level conversations. And there are some people that we just flat out don't have conversations anymore, because I don't have an issue if you're Republican. I don't have an issue if you're Democrat, but it's a whole nother, we've gone over this. It's a human rights issue, in my opinion, if you are still a MAGA supporter, a Trump supporter at this point in time. And so I'm leaving that there. I would consider myself to fall kind of outside of both of those spectrums, but we're not going to get into that today. Maybe we'll do that on another episode and discuss values more fully. But the reason that I share all of this is I did not realize how difficult that was going to make building community, because I don't have shared values with a lot of these humans that are up here. And in order to go down to town, it's a 45-minute to an hour drive. And we have inclement weather from approximately December through the first part of April. And so that's about 5 months, that five and somewhere in there, where keeping scheduled things can be difficult. We try not to do vet appointments. We try not to do doctor's appointments. We try to do a lot of things in the summertime. And so something that I have been trying to figure out is, how do I nurture my existing relationships? And this brings me back to my friend that had come out to see me. She has made such an effort. She came out then, she came out in May, she came out again in June, only for 2 to 4 days. She'll drive the 5 hours. She spent, a Friday to a Monday here, and she headed back on Monday. So we get maybe 3 days total right out of all of that. And that's okay. And I've started deciding that it doesn't have to be some all or nothing, right? It doesn't have to be that we go on an international trip for 3 weeks, although we've done that. I love doing that with her. But having that in-person touch point can be really fulfilling. And so for me, taking the time to do that, I went back to Oregon and I chose to drive. And I chose to drive. Normally I fly. My family and my husband's family both live in Oregon still. And I chose to drive because I could add an extra day on, and I could spend the night at a friend's house. It added an hour and a half to my total 8 hours, technically 2 hours. So put me at a 10-hour drive. And on the way out there, I drove to her house. I stayed, had a really wonderful 15 hours with her and her husband. I got to catch up and have some quality time, and then drove on to visit my parents. Was able to see some really lovely friends there. And that was one of my biggest regrets, is when I left where I was living, I was just starting to make some really, really delightful relationships, especially with one person specifically. And we still catch up, we chat on Voxer, but we both have really busy lives. She's a super busy professional doing some really cool work in the world. And I love spending time with her. We went to brunch and I could have spent the entire day. Unfortunately, neither of us had the entire day. But again, we took 3 hours out of that day that we both had. We took a Sunday, we got brunch, we caught up, we had coffee, we did work things, life things, personal things, just anything that we could share. And then we lamented the fact that we both would have loved to continue doing this, but we both have things to go do, and we would catch up again. And so those moments, while I would love to spend more time with all of these individuals and vice versa, these are the moments that we get. So we can either take these and love them and be so happy with them, or we can ignore them because it's not enough time, right? And one of my favorite things to do, and something that I'm looking for locally, is to go run errands with someone, because we're all busy, we're all trying to do things. And so something that we're going to be doing this summer at our house is we're inviting a bunch of our friends up, and we are batch cooking and batch canning. And so again, we're bringing an aspect of community while also bringing an aspect in of chores, food, splitting the load. And we're all going to bring canning jars. We're all going to bring the various accessories we need. We have the largest home to be able to do all of this. We have all the canning supplies, and it will be a matter of, hey, like, let's lay out the recipes. We're going to plan, we're going to make a bunch of empanadas. My parents are going to be here. We do elk empanadas normally every other summer. And then we get them all packaged up. We get them cooked, packaged up, and frozen. And then they're really easy grab and go meals. And again, a lot of our friends are in their mid to late 20s to early 40s. And so we are all busy professionals or parents or some combination of all of the above, right? We're busy, we're potentially burnt out, and we're wanting to have time that we can spend together, but we don't always have time to devote to do nothing. And while I would love the ability to do nothing with all of my friends on a regular basis, we're finding ways to continue to get together and continue to spend time together and accomplish what needs to be done. And so what I used to do when I lived in Oregon, we'd go pick up, one of our friends and we'd do our Costco shopping and we'd run errands and we'd, do whatever needed to get done, but we're doing it together. And then maybe we'd go get lunch or we'd go get a snack or we grab brunch or a coffee. And so it's this combination of doing things that have to get done and enjoying it and spending quality time with the people that we care about in our lives. And so that is something that I'm looking to bring back into what I was doing. And I'm looking to build community and to continue, like, build community with the people that live apart from me, of course. They are always welcome here. I'm going to be making the effort to go see them more, again, even if it's just a couple of days, or even if it's on the way somewhere or incorporated with something else. But I'm also looking, and this is where you all come in, because I feel like a lot of people in my life are feeling this way right now. I'm looking to build local community as well. I travel a lot, and when I travel, I have community abroad, which is really ironic, but I have not put the time into nurturing community in Boise proper. And so, if you're listening to this, if you're in Boise and think that we might be a good fit, have a desire to sometimes come up here, want to run errands while I'm in town and go grocery shopping together, or go to Home Depot or go to D&B, please reach out. I'm also looking, and this is something that I'm putting a real effort in, into joining not just networking groups, because I feel like there's, an element in a lot of networking groups, especially for women, what I call toxic girl boss hustle culture. Not interested in that. Not interested in surface level conversations. Not interested in getting up at 5 and working until 10 p.m. Just to be clear, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Not what I want to be doing. And I also am looking for people that have shared values. And so if you are listening, if you have chapters that you can recommend of various organizations. There was a silent book club that I joined for a little bit that I really enjoyed, but I'm not able to make all of their events in the winter because, like I said, it can be a little bit difficult to commit to. And then on the flip side, I told you I was going to talk about my husband, and I'm going to share a little bit here. But a lot of the men in my life seem to be, I know we have a male loneliness epidemic, right? And the men in my life, I wouldn't say are necessarily lonely. They are really great humans. They are really good partners, whether they're partnered or not. They're good people. But there is an element, I feel like we're coming back to community, where a lot of the men in my life seem to be lacking community. And that's something that can be difficult as well, right? Again, we're all going in different directions, but where I can sit down and I can have a conversation with one of my, woman friends and say, hey, even a lot of my male friends, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Can we sit and chat about this? Or I'm not okay, which I think is really important to be able to have. I feel like a lot of our male friends aren't able to do that with one another, and a lot of them, the men in my life. And so, something that I think is really important while I'm building community is seeing the men in my life build community. I'm not here to build that for them, right? I think it's really important for them to build it for themselves, for them to figure out what that version of it looks like for them. But something that I've come back to, and I've said to a couple of my friends, is women have been building community for hundreds, if not thousands of years. For practicality, for survival, to pass information, to share the workload, to share love, share friendship. There's so many different ways that women are really phenomenal at creating community. And I would love to see the men in our lives have even 50%. I mean, I'd love for them to have 100% of that, but I'd love them to create something like that for themselves as well. And so, there are things that I've looked at, do you take courses or classes? Do you take a welding class that interests you? Do you find, hobbies that interest you that may have shared individuals? I've thought about joining, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm not religious, but I have thought about joining, I think it's the Universal Life Church, which seems to have similar values as, what I'm looking for. And there is one in Boise. And I was like, maybe that's a really good spot to go. The former Catholic in me is dying a little bit at this thought of, going back to church, because I hated church. I hated church with a passion. So much so that, I told my mom I wouldn't be going any longer at 16. And my sister, who's almost 7 years younger than I am, went, yeah, me too. I'm not going. And while I'm happy for her, I was definitely a little resentful at the time because I was like, I had to go, I had to suffer, I had to hate all this, and you get to just bail out. And the idea of going back to that, but it's a community aspect. And that's what I see with one of my grandmothers who is Catholic, is that has been a really great resource for her and a good gathering point for her to have community, for her to have socialization. I see the same thing with my mother-in-law who goes to a Lutheran church. She has a women's group that she goes to once a week there. She has other activities that they arrange, and it's been really great. I'm not wanting the religious aspect of it. I'm wanting the community aspect of it. So I encourage you, if you're feeling like I am, to maybe take some time. Again, I'm open to ideas. If you have ideas, if you have suggestions for areas that I can build community or things that you have done in your life that you're like, hell yeah, this has worked really well, I would love to hear them, because this is just a really open, vulnerable episode of where I'm at, what's going on, and what I'm noticing with a lot of the other women and men and individuals in my life. There's a lot of these shared experiences. And I think now more than ever, leaning on your community is ever so important, both from a well-being and also out of necessity. So let me know what you're doing. Let me know what's worked for you either now or in the past. And I will say I've tried Bumble. I hate Bumble, like Bumble BFF, just to be clear. I'm not looking to date anyone else. And Bumble, at least, maybe I'll try Bumble when I go abroad. But Bumble, when I have been using Boise, their surface level, it's eh. And maybe I'm not putting enough effort in. That's what I definitely felt like about a lot of my longer distance friendships that I want to maintain. And that was something that I just decided to suck it up and do because they matter to me. They've been there for me. I'm going to be there for them. So I am excited to hear what you have to say. And if you are feeling the same way, I would appreciate if you subscribed, shared this with your friends, took a friend grocery shopping, took a friend to run errands with you. That would be one of the most satisfying things that you could take away from this, is spending more time with the people you love, even if it's doing things that are productive, because that's okay too. That's a wrap for this episode of the Wealth Witches podcast. I hope our magical money talks have left you feeling empowered and inspired. Remember, wealth isn't just about dollars in the bank, it's about abundance and financial freedom in all aspects of your life. I'm Katelyn Magnuson, encouraging you to keep challenging the status quo and embrace your inner witch on this financial journey. Until next time, stay magical.